Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to learn how we can create Teams conference call from our Power App screen using MS Graph API endpoint. So right now I'm into my MS Graph Explorer and I open one of the endpoint that is me/online meetings, and it's a post call and where we pass start date and date time and subject of the meeting, and when we run this query we get response out of it, joining URL and the other metadata for this meeting, that is meeting code is broadcast false. And the same thing we are going to automate from our Power screen. So it could be the case like where we want to create the Teams online meetings directly from our Power Apps based on the attendees, based on the start date and end date, and we want to automate that stuff. So here's the solution. So we can open our Power Apps Studio and we'll be starting creating one app, and I'll just start with page design. We'll choose blank. So over here, to start with the screen design, I would not be focused on the beautification of the screen, but I would just insert a couple of controls, the date picker, and I will copy this so that I can have my start and end date both together, and we'll just name that as my start date and end date and the time as well. I'll just change the format for my this date so that I can pass the format which I am passing into my this body as start date time. So I will just choose, I'll go to advanced and I'll choose this time zone, it's fine, but the date time format I will choose as long date time 24-hour, and the same format I'll choose for my end date, and we'll just copy paste. And along with that I would need just one button so that I can schedule my meeting. So I'll just have this button and where I will say generate my Teams meeting, and in response I wish to have this generated Teams call URL so that it can be directly used. I'll just say generate meeting, and I will also just include one label so that I can see my newly created meeting URL, and I'll just put that just beside that, and this will be a long URL, so I'll just make it a multi-line, or it's fine as well. Once we click on this generate meeting, we should have our meeting generated, and now the main process would start. So we'll be starting with creating one Azure app registration for MS Graph client so that we can make a call via one app. And in my previous videos I have explained the entire process. You have to go to the infra ID, and over here in the left hand side let's go to app registrations. So you can start creating a new registration, or if you already have any existing app which connects with the MS Graph API, then you can choose. For example, this is my existing one, so I can click on this and it gives me the display name. So if you're creating a new one, you have to provide a display name. It will generate a client ID for you. Just you need to copy and keep it for later use. And once you are done, and you have to go to API permissions and grant add permission, choose as Microsoft Graph, and as we are going to make a call with application, so you can choose application permission, and we are going to just do an online meeting. Just scroll to the right, permission set, so just provide this one, and once you are done, and you can just say add permission and grant the consent as well. So that is the step, and you have to go back to the certificates and secrets and just create a new certificate for your application so that you can just have that value handy for you. So I can just say that MS Team certificate. You can set the expiry of that certificate. Let's add. You will get a value for the first time. Just store it into Notepad so that you can use it later. And once you're done, so we have to click on authentication. So over here we have to specify the redirect URIs. So I'll tell you like why this is required. Before that, we'll just start creating one custom connector. You can just open make.powerautomate.com, and we'll be just making a custom connector for this API call where we are going to create these meetings via this custom connector. So I'll click on this custom connector option, and we'll start from blank. Just give it a name, MS Teams Meeting Connector, and we can leave this background color and all this as is. And over here we have to specify the scheme as HTTPS, and the host is graph.microsoft.com. so you can just paste it or you can just type in as you like. And go to the security tab. You will be asked for the authentication type, just to choose as OAuth 2.0. And now we have to paste the client ID, and client ID, as I told you, like we can get it from our overview of this app. And we'll just paste this client ID and secret which you have copied into your notepad, secret value. And authorization URL, we have to paste the authorization URL, which is https login microsoftonline.com. Here have to paste an authorization URL. Token URL though is required, so you can keep pasting this one, that's fine. And in scope, leave it as is, and this redirect URL would be generated once we save it. So get to the next definition, and over here we'll start adding new action, and action would be create Teams meeting, and I'll just copy the same into my operation name, operation ID. And now we are going to create the request from sample, and we are going to just use that as post. And now we'll copy the endpoint from our MS Graph Explorer. Headers, you can create a variable for header as well, but if you wish to leave, you can leave it. And over here in body, we'll be just pasting this one so that it can take that as sample and create the required variables for us. And once we import, it created body as variable, and if I just do an edit, you will find this JSON other attributes which is created for this body. You can go back and we can just update our connector or create connector, and we'll test this connector. And for testing, we have to create a connection, and for that connection, now this step comes where we are going to set the redirect URL. So once it's created, go back to your security tab. Now at the bottom, we got this redirect URL, copy that and go back to your app. And as I said, we have to go into authentication and create a new URL for redirection so that it can be validated. And once added, save it. Now go back to your custom connector back. Go to the test part. Now create a new connection. Click the connection. Now this is directly opening, but we need to fix one thing which we forgot, that in case of this resource URL, so just go to over here and add your resource URL as http graph.microsoft.com. We'll just copy this quickly and paste it. And now we will again go to definition, update our connector. In security, it has removed this client secret. We need to put that again. No worries. Just paste it again. Now we would be good to test. Clicking new connection, clicking in account for test. And now we are going to pass this as raw body, you can pass, or JSON as well. So because we have this as JSON, I'll just paste this like JSON only. and we'll do a test operation, and we got 2 not 1. That means it's a success, and we have this join URL which is important to us. So that means our custom connector is ready to be used, and I'll just save this app, create MS Teams on call. Now we will add a data source, and data source in our case would be custom connector that we created, MS Teams custom connector, and we'll pick. Now as we have this MS Team connector added, now the next thing is we are going to call this method. So I'll just say MS Teams connector dot create meeting, and over here it takes 3 arguments: start date, end date, and subject. So start date I'm going to pass from our start date picker dot selected date, end date from our end date picker selected date, and subject we are going to, right now we are going to hard code for our demo Teams call, and we are just going to close this method. But it will give us error because the date format it is expecting is not the quite date format which this Power Apps control gives to us. So the quickest way is like formatting the date whatever we require. So I have already formatted, and if you see I have this formula where I have this formatted in this fashion. So I'll just copy this formula and I'll paste this formula for your easiness as well. So I'll just do this replace, and date picker is our start date, and same thing we are going to do for the other formula. So I'll just replace the end date with the same formula so that we can get a data into or the date into our required format. I'll just say end date. So now we are good, and because we want to save the response into one of the variables so that it can be passed on for the subsequent operations, so I'll just say set response, and I'll just close this formula, and now I have this response into this response variable. So as I said, like I'll be setting up this response into this one so that we can see the URL or the Teams URL generated, and I will use this because we are getting response into JSON. So first of all we have to use this JSON response so that we can convert the JSON response, and once we have the JSON response we have to parse that into, and after parsing we have to extract the text or the value out of it. And what value we want to extract out of it? We want to extract the join URL. So I'll go back to app and we'll just say extract text from this formula, and the text value I want to extract is join URL. I need to check whether I'm writing it correct or not. Okay, it's correct. Join URL small r. So we have this now. So let's run this and see whether we are getting the proper data or not. So I'll just select the date as this, and time I'll just keep as this, and I will say date as 9th. And once I click on generate meeting, try reopening the app, ensure all collection has been resolved. So no problem, we will just close it and we will just reopen for the sake that all connection should be resolved. It actually gives a prompt to allow the connection for custom connectors. I'll just close it and reopen it. So now this time running this, we got this join URL, and this join URL we can use as in subsequent operation of sending. Let's say you want to send this URL or this meeting request to somebody in email, we can use another button and we'll just say send email. So once this is generated, I want to send this URL or the details into email. So send link. You can do that subsequent operation with this within this on select, but for the sake of like make it clearly visible, I'm doing over here. So for that, I am just going to add one new data source for Office 365 Outlook. So I'll just say Office 365 Outlook, and I'll use my connection, and we'll just say send email. We'll say Office 65 send email, and for demo purpose, I'll just pick my name. Otherwise, you can have attendees input column where like you can just fetch the value from input box, and once it's passed, I'll subject Teams meeting, and in body I'm just going to put this label which is into my this text label on the text, and we are just going to close this. So once saved and again running this generate meeting, it will generate a new meeting, and the URL would change, and send link, it will send the link into the email, and once you open the email, you will find the Teams meeting URL into your mailbox. I have this one. So overall, if you wish to have this meeting code or the passcode meeting, then there would be additional attribute of passing the meeting code. Join meeting ID is passcode required or not. So once you run it, you will have this meeting passcode into your response. So you can very well add this attribute, which is again a JSON, and can use or interpret that JSON into your any of the form. So this is just a rough demo where you can just include this feature into your any of the existing app, where you can generate MS Teams link meeting directly from your Power Apps without using Power Automate or any flow, directly with a custom connector via MS Graph API. So that is it for today's video. If you have any questions, please drop your comment. I'll try to answer. Thank you.